This is about how, you remember when you used to envy water? I can remember I really, I mean, we all admired water, of course. We loved water, but then at a certain point, I think it happens maybe between the age of 12 and 13, you begin to envy water because you begin to sense what's in store for you as a human being. Now that you're never going to be water. No time soon, anyway. So this is sort of about, this is sort of about how, you see water all the time. Water has a really extensive a number of relationships, and it's all the same water. I know a poet actually who I was talking to her one time, and she began to talk about the water that was in the ice cube tray in the freezer. She began to weep, about how that water had to live in the ice cube tray, separated into those, those 18 units, and so far away from the ocean. Can you imagine?
It's sad.
It is sad. So this is called the social life of water. All water is a part of other water. Cloud talks to lake. Mist speaks quietly to creek. Lake says something back to cloud, and cloud listens. No water is lonely water. All water is part of other water. River rushes to reunite with ocean. Tree drinks rain and sweats out dew. Dew takes elevator into cloud. Cloud marries puddle. Puddle has long conversation with lake about fjord. Fog sneaks up and murmurs insinuations to swamp. Swamp makes needs known to marshland. Thunderstorm throws itself on estuary. Waterspout laughs at joke of frog pond. All water understands. Reservoir gathers information for database of watershed. Brook translates lake to waterfall. Tide wrinkles its green forehead and then breaks through. All water understands. But you stand on the shore of blue Lake Kiev in the evening and listen, grieving, as something stirs and turns within you, not knowing why you linger in the dark, not able even to guess from what you are excluded. I lived in the Bay Area for 2 years, sensing that I would be eventually found out and expelled.
As happened.
Indeed, I met somebody who was had a business card with 2 sides to it. I respected her multi-dimensionality. One side said media handler, the other side said dream consultant. After a brief conversation, she said, "How do you like living in the Bay Area?" I said, "It's okay." Before there was even a beat between those sentences, she said, "If you don't love it, you have to leave." Anyway, so I wrote about how happy things are in Berkeley since I left. It's called Here in Berkeley. Here in Berkeley. The jogger with the Rastafarian sweats runs past the mechanic reading marks on lunch break with a sprout sandwich for a bookmark. As the sunlight through a bottle of Perrier wobbles little rainbows on his knee. On the corner, someone wearing I Ching earrings is talking about personal space. How she just can't take it anymore. The way that Marcia's codependency defeats her own empowerment. The whole seminar is out of whack, she says, slapping a bouquet of daisies on her knee. Close your eyes, swing a baguette horizontally, you'll hit someone with a PhD in sensitivity. Someone who, if not a therapist himself, will offer you the number of his therapist, which it may take you years to figure out is a hostile act on his part, designed to send you on a wild goose chase through the orchard of your childhood to fetch the tarnished apple of your mother's love. And if you don't like it, there might be something wrong with you. You might be so reincarnationally headed in the wrong direction that you can't hear the music hovering above this zone of crystal necklaces and cosmic charms. Now the traffic lights harmonically converge. The traffic flows past the bakeries and bookstores, past the cappuccino depot and the acupuncture center. No matter how you feel, you have to act like you are very popular with yourself. Very relaxed and purposeful. Very unconfused. And not like you are walking through the sunshine, singing in chains. I'm going to read a poem that I don't usually read lately. This is a poem, so I make my living as a teacher, and so it means that I have, I encounter obstacles, in my effort to teach things that I barely know myself. And this is about a conversation that I've sometimes had with students of mine when I assert the amount of privilege that Americans have, and American college students especially, and they say something that I actually feel myself, which is that all this prosperity and affluence is actually a weird kind of suffering, which is difficult to complain about because, well, for obvious reasons. It's sort of indecent to complain about the amount of opportunity that one has, but it's a weird kind of suffering invented in a very special part of heaven. And so in this poem, I have that conversation with this student of mine, this alleged student of mine. And the poem's called America, which, as you all know, is the title of it's the title of a country, and it's also the title of that fabulous, epic, amazing poem by Allen Ginsberg. Then one of the students, with blue hair and a tongue stud, says America is for him a maximum security prison whose walls are made of Radio Shacks and Burger Kings and MTV episodes where you can't tell the show from the commercial. And as I contemplate how full of shit I think he is, he says that even when he's driving to the mall in his Isuzu Trooper with a gang of his friends, letting rap music pour over them like a boiling jacuzzi full of ball peen hammers, even then he feels buried alive, captured and suffocated in the folds of the thick satin quilt of America. And I wonder if this is a legitimate category of pain, or whether he is just spin doctoring a better grade. And then I remember that when I stabbed my father in the dream last night, it was not blood, but money that gushed out of him. Bright green $100 bills spilling from his wounds. And this is the funny part. He gasped, "Thank God, those Ben Franklins were clogging up my heart." And so I perish happily, freed from that which kept me from my liberty. Which is when I knew it was a dream, since my dad would never speak in rhymed couplets. And I look at the student with his acne and his cell phone and his phony ghetto clothes, and I think, I am asleep in America too. and I don't know how to wake myself either. And I remember what Marx said near the end of his life. I was listening to the cries of the past when I should have been listening to the cries of the future. But how could he have imagined 100 channels of 24-hour cable? Or what kind of nightmare it might be when each day you watch rivers of bright merchandise run past you, and you are floating in your pleasure boat upon that river, even while others are drowning underneath you, and you see their faces twisting in the surface of the waters, and yet it seems to be your own hand which turns the volume higher.
Are you taking requests?
I don't know, it depends on what they are.
You know, there's that wonderful poem about Dean and
Yeah.
wine.
Yeah, I could read that. I'd be happy to read that. I believe I have it. Thank you, Lee. So, this is a poem about, it's about wine tasting language, which seems like a fairly easy target for poetic speech. The one good thing we can say about wine connoisseurship in America is that it's kept, it's kept people in touch with metaphor, which can't be a bad thing. Because, they have to have their own idiom for it, and they have to improvise it, or at least use, the world, the speech of illusion and metaphor and so forth. They have to be able to describe, wines like this wine is a Baptist trapped in the body of an Episcopalian. So anyway, in this particular poem, in which I make fun of a friend of mine named Dean Young, it imagines him tasting wine after wine and describing them in a language of metaphor without ever really needing to mention wine. So the poem's called When Dean Young Talks About Wine. The table is covered in clean white cloth. The candles are dripping beneath their flames. The host has stood and raised his glass, and the guests all wait, looking slightly confused, because when Dean Young talks about wine, it seems that wine is rarely mentioned. He says, great first chapter, but no plot. He says, long runway, short flight. He says, this one never had a secret. He says, you can't wear stripes with that. He squints as if recalling his childhood in France. He purses his lips and shakes his head at the glass. 84 was a naughty year, he says. And for a second, I worry that California has turned him into a sushi eater in a cravat. Then he says, this one makes clear the difference between a thoughtless remark and an unwarranted intrusion. Then he says, in this one, the Pacific last light of afternoon stains the wings of the seagull pink at the very edge of the postcard. But where is the Cabernet of rent checks and asthma medication? Where is the Burgundy of orthopedic shoes? Where is the Chablis of skinned knees and jelly sandwiches, with the aftertaste of cruel Little League coaches and the undertone of rusty station wagon? His mouth is purple, as if from his own ventricle he had drunk. He sways like a fishing rod. When a beast is hurt, it roars in incomprehension. When a bird is hurt, it huddles in its nest. But when a man is hurt, he makes himself an expert. Then he stands there with a glass in his hand, staring into nothing, as if he was forming an opinion.